Anybody? Yes, sir. I think it's Charles over there. Yeah.
Well, I don't actually have a question. Thank you. Thank you. Marianne, if I may, I just want to share a testimony.
Okay.
I was here 2 weeks ago, and the meditation that you offered that evening, you had us picture the face of someone that we were having a conflict with. And my sister's face came up in my consciousness. For the past few years, she and I have had some conflict. But for so many years of our lives, we've been so close. But there had been some situations that happened, and from my human perspective, I felt that she had wronged me. Right. I felt betrayed. I felt hurt. And I would talk to friends about the situation because I was so confused. I didn't understand how this situation with my sister could happen. Right. And other people would say, well, you know, sometimes you just have to cut people off.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to have boundaries. Sometimes you have to do this. And so I would think, well, I have to cut off my sister? Really?
So what happened?
And so you offered the meditation, and that night I got the Course in Miracles from the back, and over the next couple of days I began reading it, and by the time I got to the 5th page, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to reach out to her, and I knew that I'd been praying about this already for years.
Yeah.
And asking for guidance, but I knew that for me to do anything coming from a place from a lack of clarity would not be a good idea.
Right.
And so with keeping in mind the things that you offered during the meditation and also from the Course in Miracles, I was able to reach out to her within just a few days, and the situation is completely healed.
And you know, the beauty of that also is that that shift in your consciousness had to occur. Because sometimes, if your consciousness hasn't really changed, don't bother reaching out. That's why sometimes, and all the time, do you contact them, do you not? All of that has to do with your internal gut. And if the situation, the alchemy has not occurred that needs to occur first, there's probably no point in doing that. But you had gone through that shift, and you saw the situation change. Remember, it's a basic principle of the Course of Miracle Mindedness that all minds are joined. So as you joined, as you opened to a perception of her innocence, remember, as the Course in Miracles says, victimization is an attack. So the thought that you had that she had hurt you was perceived emotionally by her as an attack.
Right.
So when you withdrew the projection of her guilt, the space was created within her to receive your love.
Right.
That's really great. Thank you. Okay, no other questions specifically about the stuff we were talking about? Okay, only if it's a question. Is it a question about that? Okay, and then I'll say these and we'll go on. Yes.
My name is Joan. I'm in the middle of a forgiveness process myself, and I was wondering if you could tell me a bit more about the relationship with the psychological needs. Because what I experience is that I need to pay attention to that too. I cannot go too fast into the more spiritual understanding, so what you're...
Well, the Course in Miracles says that religion and psychotherapy at their peak are the same thing. You know, the Course in Miracles is not a religion, it is a psychological training. So when the Course in Miracles is talking about religion in that sense, it's not talking about dogma, it's not talking about doctrine. It's talking about what's really happening in the spirit. Remember, psychology, it's just a word. So when you talk about the genuine religious experience or psychotherapy, you're talking about a healing of the mind. The good therapist might say, okay, let's say a woman's in therapy. The good therapist is probably going to say, is he a commitment phobe? Are you a love addict? Is he a love avoidant? Is there stuff with his mother? All that stuff. But the therapist is not going to leave you there. The good therapist might take you to a place where we have to talk about what's going on here and what kind of game is being played. But the good therapist isn't going to just leave you there. That understanding might be important, but if it then leaves you in a place of blame, that of itself won't save you. You might need to know it. It's part of understanding it, but even then to take it to the next step of complete forgiveness. But complete forgiveness in that case will not be from not having known what was going on. So psychotherapy and something like the Course in Miracles is a system of psychotherapy. It is a self-study program of spiritual psychotherapy. Does that make sense? So you never have to worry that doing the Course in Miracles is going to make you psychologically less astute. Because if you become psychologically astute, but with no more ability to forgive than before, you might have been stuck because you weren't really clear about what was going on, and you were living in mystery, and that is a stunted place. But then if the information becomes available to you, but you still you still stay in the place where you can't forgive it, it's just a flip side of being stuck. It's where you know what's going on. And even then, you can move to that higher place of love and forgiveness. So you never have to worry that there's some conflict here between spirituality and psychotherapy. Not if it's the right therapist, and not if it's real spirituality. Does that make sense? Does that make sense for you? Does it make sense for everybody else? Okay, cool. Real quickly, let me just make a few announcements before we go into the next thing. New online course is available called Aging Miraculously. If many of you definitely don't get it, it has nothing to do with you, but some of you, perhaps it does, and you can find out about that on Marianne.com. Also, I am co-hosting a fundraiser for Christine Pellegrino, who is a candidate for the New York State Assembly. There's a special election, that's District 9, that's Nassau and Suffolk counties. That will be at my home on Tuesday, May 23rd? Are you sure? Yeah, well, it says May 23rd, so. Yeah, I thought May 11th. You can find out about that on sistergiant.com. Oh, the election is on May 23rd. The fundraiser is on May 11th, 6 to 8 p.m. And you can find out information about that at sistergiant.com. I saw a few people leaving here one night. They bought a few books, and they had these plastic polka dot bags, and I felt really like, oh God, no, we shouldn't be doing that. So I have some cloth bags at home, and if you have some cloth bags you're not doing anything with, please bring them for that, because we don't want to be environmentally incorrect if we don't have to be. Okay, Sister Giant Video on Demand is available. I'll be in Phoenix, for those of you who are around there, this weekend at the International Women's Conference on Friday night. I'm speaking, the She Recovers event here in New York is Sunday. I'll be speaking Sunday morning, but only the live stream is available. If you are not on my e-list and you'd like to be, please join. Tonight's lecture, CDs, books, and all of that are out there, and I think some out there also. Okay, and more details at Marianne.com. Okay, let's talk about anything that you want to talk about. Ask anything that you would like to ask. Also, if Sarah is watching, I did read your email. I would like to talk to you in person, because, I mean, you know, on the phone or email, because it's just too long, and I have questions to ask you, okay? So I promise I did read it, and we'll get to that. Okay, and I might do some of those after that, okay? All right, who wants to talk about what? Yes, ma'am.
When you said that when you're talking to someone and you're going into that back and forth defense mode, what do you suggest to do then? Okay.
Remember when I was talking tonight, it's an extremely important practical element of A Course in Miracles. It is called in the Course in Miracles the Holy Instant. And one of the reasons, you know, one of the reasons you want to pray, one of the reasons you want to meditate, one of the reasons you want to take responsibility for this kind of thinking in the morning. We live in such an ADD culture. Everybody lacks impulse control. You know, there's a Yiddish term, shpilkas. Everybody has shpilkas now. And we say things, we do things, and nobody's got, there's a real lack of centeredness. Because it's a culture. It's a feeling the culture is spinning out. And too many times we're like spinning out. And so a lot of times you just keep talking and you're just almost building, you know, making the hole deeper. right? So if you've meditated in the morning, if you've done the workbook lessons in the Course in Miracles in the morning, or whatever your serious meditation path is, just like you do physical exercise to build a muscle so you can move, you do prayerfulness and meditation, whether it's the Course in Miracles lessons or any other, to develop a capacity for stillness. That is the greatest antidote to chaos, is not that you enter into the chaos, but that you become yourself such a space of stillness that it becomes it's a spiritual power in the presence of which chaos begins to dissolve. And that's what we want to practice, is the holy instant. And as I was saying tonight, even one instant. Because the problem is, and I know this from experience, if you've meditated in the morning, let's say you've done your workbook lesson, I'm not saying you'll be an enlightened master for the rest of the day. I'm not even saying you won't come close to the cliff. But the chances are greatly improved, dramatically improved. You can pull yourself back. Marianne, just shut up. Just shut up right now. Shush. Just be quiet. Because we start, and then you become part of it. And when you're doing it, you feel like, no, I need to say this. But that part of you that, quote unquote, needs to say that, it's just appetite. It's that lack of impulse control. It's not necessarily, yet silence can be a profound, when it's, and that's, tell God, the line from the Bible, be still and know I am. Stillness is a spiritual power. And so that's the technique. Go into divine neutral, even if it's only an instant. Like when you're a kid, take a deep breath, count to 10. But it's taking it even to a deeper place. Just in this moment, dear God, may I see the innocence in that person. May I see the innocence in that person. Dear God, I'm insane right now. You're not beyond getting insane, but you're beyond knowing. You're beyond not knowing you're insane. Dear God, help me. Dear God. And the alchemy happens. It's the attitude adjustment. But you can't make it. You can't do it yourself. It's grace. It's God's hand. Does that make sense? And then everything just shifts. It's just like a chiropractic adjustment of the soul, the holy instant. Does that make sense? Okay. Who's next? Yes, ma'am, over there.
I actually have two questions.
Okay, you get two.
The first question is, before you come out to speak, do you know exactly what you plan on saying, or do you just kind of let it flow?
Well, I find the feeling tone.
Okay.
I think of myself as a kind of jazz philosopher. I don't know exactly what I'm going to say, but I've practiced the riffs.
Right.
But if I write down what I want to say exactly, then it can't bubble up. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
And I pray for all of you a lot.
That's awesome.
I come. And that's really the main thing.
So the second question, you talked about being in the past and the future. I'm interested to know, what's your take on past life regression?
Okay. In the Course in Miracles, it's really interesting. It's in the 3rd volume where it asks that question. And it says that it would not tell you the answer, you to ask within, but it says something very interesting that I take to be kind of like a wink wink. And it says that the value of the belief in reincarnation is that it reminds you you're not a body. But the ego's use of reincarnation is that it would make it too much about the past, and the healing is not in the past, it's in the present. So from a Course in Miracles perspective, if there are past lives, they're all happening in this moment. I'll tell you, Jean Houston did a past life regression on me once.
Really?
It was pretty interesting because my voice got like this. And I was saying, nobody knows how he suffered. I was saying that. I kept saying, nobody knows how he suffered. nobody knows how you suffered. And it was interesting because I was like listening to myself. Well, who knows? See, that's the other thing. It's like kind of going to a psychic. Maybe yes, maybe no. So you can't really know. But one thing that was interesting was, according to this past life regression, I was a son of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings.
Wow.
Now, the interesting thing about that is I have, and many of my friends have commented on this, I have a very weird combination of excitement about the founders and this thing about racial justice. And usually people are one or the other. That if you're really that into the founders, you kind of minimize, the slavery thing. Or if you're really into the racial thing, it's like you minimize the founders. So I've always thought that was interesting, because I've always been fascinated by that whole story and all of that. So who knows is the only thing. But nobody knows.
Thank you.
Interesting. I come from Texas, so I don't know what that's about, but this is more like this. Who knows? Okay. Yes, sir.
She's got it. Marianne, I know you ran for Congress in 2014, I think.
Yes, I did.
And you lost.
I did.
So the question is, would you run again? And two things for you to consider. Hi, wow, there you are. Three of the last four presidents, when they ran for Congress, they lost.
Yeah, most people do lose the first time.
And each one say if they won, they never would have become president. And are you aware that it's neither here nor there, but this is Donald Trump's former church?
Well, it was his parents. This is where he met Marla, yeah.
Right, and his father, his funeral
And his
was
father,
here.
yes. Yes, I am Gail, his.
So would you run again?
No. I think if I was younger. If I was like 10 or 15 years younger, I think I probably would. But no, I'm not. But I'm very interested in the issues. It was a very exhilarating and a very brutal experience. What you said is true. Obama lost the first time he ran. Most people. I'm very interested, as you know, the fundraiser I'm doing. I'm interested in other people who are running. I will be, to the best of my ability, out there working hard on those 2018 elections as anyone. One of the things I do feel, having run for Congress, is I learned a lot. The only thing that is ultimately a failure is something in life you didn't learn from. So I'm not going to be a candidate again, but boy, any good progressive candidates who are running in 18, you have my support, and I'll do anything I possibly can to turn that House of Representatives around. So. Okay, who's next? Yes.
Hi, I had a question about your perspective on being able to not care what other people think.
That whole "what you think of me is none of my business" stuff?
Yeah, just kind of expound on that, if you will.
Well, it's a tough one, but that's one thing I heard Hillary Clinton on television this morning, and I was greatly admiring, actually, of her when you think of what the things that have been said about her, and she's out there, up there. And I think that I have had a lot in my life. Anytime you hit any kind of a public mark, but I know for myself, it must be the years going by. You have to get, I think for women particularly, I think women are, maybe it's because we all carry a cellular memory of a time when we were burned at the stake for having voices, for speaking our truth. I think that particularly for women in today's world, if you are speaking your truth, somebody's not going to like you for it. And the only way to, if everybody's applauding you every time no matter what you do, if you're only getting applause, I think you might want to question deeply what you're doing and what you're not doing, because we're living in a world today where if you're not repudiating the dominant cycle of things, then you might want to really think about that. There's a word. Somebody was telling me about this place where this child had gone. There's this phenomenon where basically kids are kidnapped by their own parents and sent out to these places these days. And somebody was saying, your daughter's being very compliant, as though that's a really good thing. I find that a chilling word. Compliant? Compliant? It's chilling to me. So I think that the fact that somebody didn't like what you said may or may not mean that you said the wrong thing. So I know in my life, it's always that check. You know, if somebody's angry at me for something, I have to really think, is there any part of what they said true? I mean, I do think that's important, because you want to always, you know, did I say something wrong or do something wrong or do it in the wrong way? I know I've seen times, a lot of times in my life, well, it wasn't what you said, it was how you said it. But then other times I get, no. They didn't like it because it was a woman saying it, or they didn't like it because it was a Jew saying it, or they didn't like it was whatever. So I think that you come to a point in your life where what you're looking for is your own self-respect. And I know I came to a point many years ago, if I was sitting on the back row, I would want to respect me. That's really where you get to. Who's respect? So I think it hurts when people talk trash about us, any of us, but I think particularly the state of the world today, we're all called upon to a level of power, I think, and greatness that just is, talk about being risen, that just can't be. When I turned 50, a girlfriend of mine said, 50 is the age past which you don't care what anybody thinks anymore. You know, I do think it comes with age some. It's like when it just can't, of all the big things happening on the planet, really, and especially for American women, to be honest, what are they going to do? Throw tomatoes at you? When you think of what they do to women in some cultures, if they say what they shouldn't say, cut off limbs, stone them to death. So I always think in terms of speaking my mind that, and I think every American woman or every woman in a free society has to think, you're not only speaking up for yourself, you're speaking up for millions of women who cannot. And if the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say something about you, let them say it. That's how I think we need to sort of face this. I think going with that, though, we all have to be really there for each other. To support each other, and this is men and women. You know, when you see somebody, you know, one of the things you were talking about, my running for Congress, people were so wonderful to me, and many of you are probably here. People probably sent money, or people, I'm so eternally grateful. I was not supported. I will never forget it. So, you know, there's something so profoundly beautiful about that, that you stand forth, and there are people to your right, and there are people to your left. That's where we have to be. We have to be dwelling in the light, and you claim the light. And then that stuff just has less and less emotional power over you. And if on those days, you know, I love the story in the Bible, and I talk about it in, I mentioned this one in Tears to Triumph. So Moses had been given by God a rod, and his power was in the rod. And when he kept the rod high, the Israelites were victorious. And when he dropped it, the Israelites were defeated. Well, the rod is your consciousness, your disciplined thought, your power. It's Merlin's wand. Okay. Well, there's a part of the story of Exodus where it was just too heavy, and he was tired. And Aaron held him on one side, and then someone I think called I'm not sure, I think, who was it? Yeah? Yes, help him. Really? On the other side, I see you reading Hebrew there. I saw it, sir. Held him on the other. And that's such a powerful say. It's like sometimes you just can't do it. But that's what your friends are for. You know? And you can do this, and you know, we are going to walk forward, and you're not alone. And otherwise, that kind of stuff, what people are saying about you, is always going to be at you. Does that make sense? And when you are standing in strength, it invites other strong people. You know what I mean? It invites strong people. When you stand in your weakness, it invites weak people. Hello? And you stand in your strength. And people, you know, one of the things that I've certainly seen, and I think you see it if you have any kind of a public career, but you see it in life. People can smell where you're coming from. People know things subconsciously. And if you are standing to the best of your ability in what is right, there'll be people who join you. So maybe one person saying something mean about you, all of a sudden someone is going to appear over here and counter that. Does that make sense? Okay, who's next? Yes, right here.
We apparently have a microphone in this lane, this aisle. So you're speaking a lot today. I happened to bump into your sign today. I'm here from Toronto, and
welcome.
For years have been wanting to be here, so thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And on the topic of birth, crucifixion, and all the metaphors of this evening, I keep dwelling on my cesarean birth of my son 17 months ago. And I had always envisioned the power that a woman gets, that divine, metaphysical, beyond humanly power, with the ability that we are to vessel life. Okay. And then I had a cesarean after 3 days of what was hypnobirthing.
3 days?
Yes, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
My cervix was not having it. So I closed, and I often think I could have died in any other medical system had they not had the chance to be able to take my son out.
That is correct.
And yet, I'm still dwelling, and I don't know if I've just overbought into the fantasy, if it's the control aspect that I couldn't do what I really wanted to do the way I wanted to do it.
Right.
But I can't, even today, tried so hard in the quietness to just allow that to pass. And somehow the forgiveness of all of the players are there, but I'm still not sure about my body and what it did.
Well, I'm glad that you bring it up to clear this so that your child doesn't pick it up. First of all, as you yourself said, women used to die in childbirth. That's the kind of stuff that used to kill women. So let us be so grateful that you were in a place where the medical facilities and the medical expertise was there to save the child and save you. This is something to be grateful for. And you were still able to, you're still able to breastfeed if you wanted and all of that? That started. You know, I think there is some grief involved because I also, it's not something that any conscious woman would choose. And you hear some weird things these days. Well, I want to be in a bikini by June, so I'm going to take the child. I mean, that's like, I think that should be against the law. I think this idea, these doctors who will take a child early, telling women, well, nothing really happens in the 9th month. I mean, our arrogance towards nature is so outrageous. I don't even think that should be legal. But when it's necessary, as it was for you, as it is for the vast majority of women, as it was for me, she was not coming down. You know, and I went to the Chinese doctor, and I went to everybody, right? And this women used to, would die. So we want to be grateful, and I do think that there is having been there, there's a certain something that we didn't have and the child didn't have, but I promise you, it's what, 17 weeks ago you said?
17 months.
17 months. I mean, there are so many outrageously fantastic experiences of bonding with your baby. And it doesn't, I mean, think of women who adopt children, they're still the mother. And think of men whose body didn't do it, but they're still the father. I mean, even though I sort of understand a little bit of, surrender that to God and ask God to take that away and be replaced in part by the gratitude of what happened, and because you don't want that baby to pick up on anything, because subconsciously that anything was less than perfect, right?
And I think it's just the whole notion that our minds, in the way that we create the illusion of there's the illusion and then there's love, and so much of what I believe I was consciously focused on was a loving birth. I'm still in a weird shock.
Well, it was a loving birth. It wasn't a less, I mean, then you're making those of us other women who might have had C-sections, I speak on behalf of other women, we didn't have a less loving birth. And after 3 days, I would think you would have been so happy.
What I think, to be honest, what I heard, and I think what I'm still rectifying, is I was so public, I wrote in Huffington Post about the beauty that I want us to reclaim, where we just are okay with your vagina, doing what it does, and not worrying about these things. And then I had a cesarean, and it was very odd.
Oh, so you were one of those?
One of those, yeah. I was arrogant.
Well, then I'm not surprised.
So the mind over matter thing, and that illusion and that reality, I haven't
a lot of women have all kinds of romance around it who haven't had babies yet.
Okay.
It's rough. That doesn't make it less womanly.
I agree.
So maybe,
forgiveness and
I think the perfection is all of it.
Okay.
Right? And you had a loving birth.
Thank
and
you.
That's all the body anyway. okay?
Thank you.
And how a child comes into your arms is not the issue. It's that they're there now, okay? Anybody next? Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, Miriam. I was curious of your meditation practice.
Yes.
How often you meditate, how many times a day, for how long?
Well, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, so my primary meditation path is the Course in Miracles workbook. You all know that, correct? So the Course in Miracles is divided, maybe if somebody hands me one, if you have one here somewhere. The Course in Miracles is, thank you, sir. The Course in Miracles is divided into 3 books, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. Volume 1 is 600 and some odd pages of the text. It is the intellectual basis of the Course. And it's not something where you read a chapter before you go to bed at night. It's like one paragraph can blow your mind for a week, you know? Then like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Then the second volume is 365 days of lessons. And it is a psychological mind training. The workbook trains your mind to think along the lines that the text sets forth. There's a lesson for every day. The first 6 months is a very specific curriculum. The first 6 months are the dismantling of a thought system based on fear. The second half is rebuilding your thought system, a thought system based on love. Now, it's like physical exercise. It's not like you ever graduate. When you're done, you're going to keep doing it. Do you know what I'm saying? And then the third volume is just answers to questions you have. There's nothing in the Course that tells you which book to begin with. There is no rule about that. When I first read the Course, I read the text and the workbook at the same time, which was helpful to me because I felt the text was explaining the philosophy and the workbook was training me to think along those lines. But there is an introduction to the workbook where it tells you very specifically about how you never want to do more than one a day. And you might stay on one, you know, for longer than a day, but you never want to do more than one a day. So my main practice is that. My exercise today was let me perceive forgiveness as it is. After a certain point there, iambic pentameter, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know why, but.
So you just keep repeating, like when you
Well, no, the workbook tells you very specifically about how long to say it and so forth. I'm also a student of transcendental meditation. There are other meditation techniques, different, but those two are very, very powerful, and this is a specific training and thought system. That makes sense? Whoever gave me this, thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay? Anybody else? Who's next? Thank you. Yes, here, and then I'm going to go to the questions that are on that clipboard.
Hi, I actually have 2 questions. The first one is, I'm just wondering what methodology you use to determine when something is really divine will or your own will.
Okay. Now, it's not like one sounds like Tony Bennett and the other sounds like Barbara Streisand. It's not like, you know, they are both your voice, one with you when you are crazy and hysterical, and one when you are peaceful. The Course in Miracles says your state of mind is how you know. If you are peaceful, that's how you know it was the right decision. Okay? A lot of times the issue is not that you didn't hear what God told you, it's that you don't think you like what God told you. Right? And so you think maybe if you ask again next week, you'll get a different answer. But the more you do this, the better you become at knowing what the answer was. The Course in Miracles says to make no decisions by ourselves. If you want to decide what job to take, where to go, what to do, you are to make no decisions by yourself. The Course in Miracles says that the Holy Spirit is a part of your mind that knows what's going to happen tomorrow. It's beyond time. It knows who you're going to meet. It knows things that you just can't know. So you become a more finely tuned intuitional instrument. I know in my own life, sometimes if I don't know, it's because my understanding has not, I haven't gotten there yet, or something that somebody's going to tell me or something, I'm just not there yet. That's another thing. In the places where I have not listened, I wasn't getting an answer because it's not time yet. Do nothing. So I've made some big mistakes in my life because I didn't listen, or didn't even ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So usually it's not, I don't know what to do. It's that you haven't truly asked. And sometimes if you, and even here, I always say, when you're in a room like you are tonight, when you're with other people who prayed together, it's very difficult to lie to yourself here tonight. Or if you're watching, you know, you're in like-minded people. The Course in Miracles says ideas are stronger when they are shared. So whatever you're getting as the answer to the question here tonight, I would take yourself very seriously. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Does it? Okay.
And
anybody else?
I had one other
Yes.
question.
Okay.
The other one is about prayer.
Prayer.
So when I'm praying to God, sometimes I find that my prayer is deeper if I'm not actually speaking and I'm just speaking with my mind, but then I'm not vocalizing and articulating the words. I
Nobody
just
up
didn't
there
know
is
which
going,
one.
she talks, she doesn't talk. Or, you know,
well, it's not about right or wrong. It's more about which is more powerful. Because, you know, they say sometimes you need to speak things into the universe if you want them.
Never.
Okay. So it's okay to just speak it internally? Like
it's more than okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks.
Hi.
One very quick thing is I'm actually going to be doing canvassing for Christine Pellegrino this Sunday. So if anybody wants to do boots on the ground and go out to Long Island, see me after this.
So you see me after too. I'd love you to come to my house for the party.
Perfect. Very good.
Okay, good. That's lovely. I'm glad you are. It's a special election, and it's a Republican-held seat that could be, you know, it's. You know, America, this is America. We don't all have to agree with each other. That's what freedom is. I'm not saying you should see political issues as I do, or I should see them the way you do. But one thing I do think we should take a stand with each other around is participating. I do think that it is part of the conscious, sober living, sober emotionally and spiritually, that we not disengage. Politics is our collective karma. If your personal behavior matters, then our collective behavior matters. Okay? Yes. And I agree with Eisenhower, who said the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative. So, you know, we don't have to. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So I had an interesting situation right before I came here. I was getting ready to come. And I have a friend who, she knows how to push buttons. Like, she knows exactly, so whatever she says is something that I find in her that bothers me about her.
Okay.
And so to cut off that, what I did today was different. It was exactly what we did in the meditation. It was the first time I saw that, where when she said whatever she was saying and accusing me because I didn't get back to her in a text within a few hours, and that I didn't love her because I didn't get back to her, I found myself this time turning, like, instead of reacting, I said, wow, she's not feeling loved. And how can I be different? How can I respond to her differently tonight rather than being mad and like accusing her back? So it was I feel like it was what you were doing in this meditation tonight, where it was a huge breakthrough, because my normal state would be to like attack back, like, well, how could you accuse me of not responding to your text, or or being angry and not wanting to be her friend anymore, because she does it all the time, and it's like it annoys me. So, and when I did change that state in myself, I noticed, I called her, she's like, hi, she was so happy to, after just attacking me, she was so happy, because I said, I understand that you...
It's all an internal shift.
It's us.
Do you know what made that happen? Do you have any clue as to what happened inside you that got you there? That made it different?
It was almost like I said, I don't like this state in me. I don't like feeling like this when she's attacking me. I don't like this. So how can I change? How can I change and make a difference in that? And I've been doing this all around me with people.
You know, the Course in Miracles says salvation begins when we consider the possibility that there might be another way. And that is when everything, and that goes back to what we're talking about tonight, the resurrected state, that there is another way. I think that too many times we have really fallen in our society too much for this notion that people can't change and people don't change. I think we want to be like, I can change. You know, we all have places where we're weak. We all have places where we are wounded. And where we're weak is where we're wounded. You know, where you're neurotic is not where you're bad, it's where you're wounded. And to say, if I say I cannot change is the same thing as saying I cannot be healed. And if you believe that God heals all things, then you believe you can. And I think that when you are, one of the things the Course in Miracles says, even in that lesson I was doing today, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. It says, when you are about to attack someone or judge someone, think, would you accuse yourself of this? When you become more vigorous with your own willingness to change, you also counterintuitively become more merciful towards yourself. Because you do realize that in these places where you're not so great, it's because of your own childhood triggers. But the more you're able to see this in yourself, the more you will then see it in other people when they do their stuff. It's her childhood triggers. So it's very connected. If I'm willing to change, then I can see, you know, what is it in me that can change? Then it will be simpler to create a space for her to change. These are the walls that we stand behind.
I have another part of
Yes.
that wasn't really
Okay.
a question, but I'm making a movie right now, and it's something that I have to kind of out myself in the world because it's about my family.
Yeah.
And my mom was a Holocaust survivor and a hidden child, and I'm getting a lot of. It's very scary for me, like to do this, but I feel it's a really important time.
Is your mother alive?
Yes.
Are you doing anything unkind?
No, I'm not. But because she feels like she escaped, and now if I tell people she's Jewish, that they're going to come and get her.
Because your mother's not out about being Jewish?
She is. But now I'm telling the world. But as a child, she was told, she was a hidden child. She was 4 years old when she was put into hiding. She was told never to tell anyone that you're Jewish.
Right.
So she went through her whole life not telling anyone she was a survivor,
Right.
not telling anyone that
Right.
she, was.
And how old is your mother?
She's 80.
She's 80. And you're making a movie about her life?
I'm making a movie about her and my grandparents' escape.
And she doesn't want you to do this?
It's not that she doesn't want me to do it. She's okay with me doing it, but she has fears. She has fears about me asking for money. She has fears about, to make the movie, because I'm doing a crowdfunding. She has fears about, that if she is now out in the world, so, that someone's going to get her, and because of the way the world is today, and
Right.
ISIS and Trump and everyone else,
Right.
and rise in anti-Semitism. So she's
There is that rising anti-Semitism.
I know, and that's why I'm making the movie, that's the whole reason. And my heart is there, but I get this negativity. No, it's
Where
not
do you
from
get
her.
negativity from?
Well, from her her own fears,
Well,
and then I start feeling, I'm like, oh, how can I do
Well,
that?
the Course in Miracles would say that healing with her is the most important thing.
Me healing with her, or her healing?
You're healing with her.
My.
Yeah, she's your mother. That you never want, it's very easy for us to justify certain stuff because it's my art or whatever. We all do that. And I think that you want to walk step by step with her and what's comfortable for her. And no one can possibly minimize what she went through as a 4-year-old and the triggers of fear and what it means to be public. I mean, that's very deep stuff. Very, very deep stuff. And no movie is worth hurting her.
I don't think.
I'm not saying you would ever want to hurt your mother.
I don't think
I'm
it,
just
but it's just her
saying.
fears of saying that she's Jewish to people, that people know.
Well, if
that
she as a 4-year-old was picked up and taken, I mean, we can be a little too glib about that. I mean, that's, today is the anniversary of the State of Israel, Independence Day. And we don't forget that what is Independence Day for some other members of the population, Palestinians, is Catastrophe Day. So we hold the pain and the tragedy of all of this. And I'm just saying that when it comes to the story of the Jews, for some reason, it's politically somehow not challenged when people get a little glib about the Holocaust. Oh, another Holocaust story. And I just feel as a daughter and as a woman, as a Jew too, none of us can possibly understand what it would have been like, what your mother went through as a child, and that anything that we can do to dwell in ultimate kindness will only make your movie better. Make sense? Okay, yes, sir.
Explain, I think, a hidden child is a specific.
A specific. Was she a hidden, was your mother a hidden
yes.
child?
A hidden child is someone who was hidden, I assume, in a convent or a monastery or among Christians. Okay. And she was told never to tell anyone she was Jewish. She had to, as if she was a Christian child. So that I think the question is just a basic psychological question. Someone who was told as a child never to say you're Jewish, and now she's being outed to the world. How does a loving daughter deal with this?
Exactly. Just include her. Now, ignore me if I'm wrong on this, but what I'm getting, just include her in the process at the deepest level. Include her in the process. And thank you for being here and I think explaining that to a lot of people who would not know that. Is that cool? What is your name, ma'am? And we'll put your movie in a prayer.
My name, Judy Beecher.
Judy. And your mother and all. And today, celebrating the birth of the state of Israel, we remember all Holocaust victims and all Holocaust survivors. And we hold in our hearts the ongoing tragedy and deep wound that is the Israeli and Palestinian relationship. Anybody else? Okay, where's that clipboard I had? Because there was... This is really hard for me when I'm in these longer things. I'm holding things. Oh, what'd they do with my questions? Okay, what happened? I'm sorry. We can tell jokes or recipes. I gotta have my questions, babe. Huh? Thank you. Okay. For those of you who are on live stream, just real quickly. Okay. I'm a student of the course. We have tormented people, in particular children. Okay. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, regularly attend a group, do the workbook lessons every day, and read the corresponding text. I know this is my path. I wonder if you could speak on a question that creates a niggle in me, perhaps on your Tuesday lecture. What have tormented people, in particular children, done to manifest this fate for themselves, i.e. the 12,000 children who starve to death on a daily basis? What, if anything, can they do to end their torment? Are they just victims of our manifested fear and hatred? Even though they did nothing to bring it on themselves? Are the world's collective insanities powerful enough to continue in spite of our puny and mighty efforts? Does the Course speak to this? Are there principles other than the daily spiritual, etc.? Okay, so I think this is so important for us in concluding the whole conversation about resurrection. It is true, 12,000 children on this earth every day starve. That's not hungry, starve. We have 1/4 of all American children are quote-unquote food insecure. There's not starvation, but there is definitely hunger in America. In fact, a lot of obese children are actually malnourished. Okay. So you sit with this. This is the crucifixion, the resurrection right there. This is the tragedy of humanity. A perfect example. 12,000 children starving every day. Now, this is the point. There is no dearth of food. Now, the way we're going, that might happen on this planet. But right now, there is no dearth of food. So the question is not, how does God let children starve? The question is, how do we let children starve? Right? And one of the things we've talked before, there is a term, screaming emergency, silent emergency. The children who were gassed in Syria, that's a screaming emergency. America is very good with screaming emergencies. There's a tsunami, there's a hurricane, earthquakes, we always get there. We're very, very good with the screaming emergencies, with the earthquakes and so forth. We're not good compared to other nations on silent emergencies. People who are suffering the catastrophes every single day on an ongoing basis, such as starvation. You deal with the fact that the economists tell us that for $100 billion spent over 10 years, we could eradicate global deep poverty from the planet, and it is among the 1 billion, quote-unquote, bottom billion who live on $1.25 and less a day. That's where your starving children are. So for $100 billion spent over 10 years, we could eradicate deep poverty, which would eradicate children starving. That is 1/7 of the defense budget of the United States in 1 year. You sit with that. It makes you feel ill. Feel ill. Does that make sense? The Course in Miracles says, look at the crucifixion, but do not dwell on it. So you don't want to look away from that, because that's like too toxic. You don't want to look away on it, because that's negative, and I'm trying to be positive. None of that. That's immaturity. That is not spirituality. There is no serious spiritual or religious path that gives any of us a pass on addressing the suffering of other sentient beings. Now, as Americans, particularly, for better or for worse, we are citizens of a very, very powerful vortex on the planet. It's happening right now. We are, as I speak, dealing with whether or not America chooses to even try to continue to be a moral voice because of things that are happening in the news right now and what we stand for. We are citizens. So in answer to this woman's question, the point really isn't what's the karma of the starving child. The question is, what's your karma? What's my karma? And that's why when I said before, this is not a conservative or a liberal issue. Conservatives, liberals, but nobody wants to see a child starving. Conservatives and liberals might have different ideas about what the best way is of economic growth and private charity versus public justice, all that. But that we engage with our hearts. And this even goes back to the lady who asked what do you do if other people don't like it when you talk? Well, if you start really taking a stand about just like issues like this, you're not being compliant. You're not being compliant. You're not being a nice girl. And there is more and more in the world today. We're becoming more Stepford, not less. Something's happening. We're all supposed to just sort of go along. So that is the question. How to live. You can't talk about serious spirituality without addressing these moral questions. So, what's the answer? You say the answer is love. But that's one thing to say it. Another is whether it has to do with an organization that you give money to every month. You know, there's a joke in my life. Oh God, my accountant always says, oh God, she was up at 2 o'clock in the morning again. Right? Send this one $25 a month, send this one $50 a month. Oh my God, that child. Because hope is born of participation in hopeful solutions. So whether it has to do with your citizenship, whether it has to do with your money, whether it has to do with your political engagement, obviously there are children who rise. And there are people in this country, or there are people in terrible, terrible situations in this country. Mass incarceration itself, if you look at the thousands and thousands of people who are in jail in the United States who should not be, and the terrible conditions, I mean, there's so much going on, but the issue, don't stop with their karma. What is ours? So much of what is wrong in the world is because we're asleep. So much is wrong in the world is because we're disengaged. So what is the resurrection? The resurrection is our own awakening. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, I did mention yes to Mary Jane. I mentioned the line in the body, we heal the body when we're not looking at it. Absolutely, that's a direct quote from the Course. And you can see what that means. That's why meditation is healthy for the body. The Course in Miracles says that when we remember all enlightenment is a shift from body identification to spirit identification, the more you identify with your story, your circumstances, who did what, who said what, and you stay stuck within that, that is the crucified state, and it is, among other things, bad for your body. The Course in Miracles says that is a stress that creates sickness. So the more light you live, the more you meditate, the more you pray, the more you seek to love others and not attach yourself to all that stuff, it is actually the healthiest thing you can do for your body. You can take all the right vitamins, eat all the right food, but if you do not forgive, you are attacking your own body. Does that make sense? Okay, enough for tonight. As my mother would say, God willing, we will be here next Tuesday night. And let me find the prayer list. Okay? Anybody else have anything else you need to bring up or ask tonight before we leave? Okay. Please know how honored I am that you're here, and also to those of you online. Dear God, as we leave each other's presence tonight, we take this opportunity to send our love to each other. We send our love to the Giroux family. We pray for them. We pray for Rick and for Maria, for Jean-Marc. We pray for the nation of France. We pray for Megan and for Ryan, for Mariana, for Christine, for Amy and for Dora. We pray for Judy and her mother, and dear God, we join with Judy in placing this film in your hands. And may your spirit be upon her and her mother as they walk through this. We pray for the state of Israel, and we pray for the Palestinian and Israeli relationship. Dear God, may a miracle occur, and may these two beloved peoples be lifted above all walls that divide them. May the celebration be a celebration of love to come. All of us now place in God's hands our burdens, our fears, our problems, as well as our visions and our hopes, our dreams for ourselves and for all the world. We place in your hands, dear God, the precious jewel that is our earth. We place in your hands all the species upon it and for the earth itself. We place in your hands all of the people. We know that you know, dear God, who needs a miracle. We place in your hands the American political system, the politics and leaders of all nations. May enlightenment be upon them. And we ourselves, dear God, surrender ourselves that you might use us. That we might be channels for your love. And now go forth in confidence and go forth in peace. For there are angels to your left and angels to your right. There are angels in front of you and angels behind you. There are angels above you and angels below. There's a path of love already paved, stretched out before you. In every given moment, seek to walk in greater light, greater love, greater forgiveness, greater mercy, greater kindness, and greater compassion. And if at any moment you are confused, in doubt, or in fear, put your hand in front of you as would a child looking for the guidance of an elder brother who will take your hand and guide your steps. For this is no idle fantasy. He is here. And so it is. Together, we all say, amen. Thank you, everybody. God bless you.